Greetings and welcome to the daily demonstration against the covert Russian war, against the terror, against the genocide in Ukraine. Today is 1192nd day since the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. During 1192 days, Ukrainian Association in Norway is organizing daily demonstrations here near the Parliament of Norway and some days near the Embassy of Russian Terrorism in Norway. Our goal is to show a solidarity with the people of Ukraine, to condemn Russian invasion and war crimes, and to address people of Norway and Norwegian politicians to call for more political, humanitarian and military assistance to Ukraine. As always, we begin our demonstration with the national anthem of Ukraine. Доброго дня! Вітаю всіх на сьогоднішній демонстрації. Сьогодні 1192-й день з дня початку повномасштабного вторгнення. Як завжди, ми розпочинаємо демонстрацію виконанням державного гімну України.
Ще не вмерла України ні слава, ні воля. Ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці. Запануєм ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Слава захисникам та захисницям України! Слава! 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 Слава Збройним силам України! Слава! Слава! Слава!
It is more than 11 years since the war has broken out in Ukraine. More than 11 years ago, Russia has been invading Ukraine. They have annexed Crimea and they continued invasion in the east of Ukraine. The whole world told that they are very concerned with the situation, but no one has helped Ukraine in 2014. Now, with what we have learned since then, we understand that it was very cheap, very easy to stop Russia in 2014, to stop the Russian violation of international law, to serve justice. It was easy in 2014. Every day, ever since then, it becomes more expensive. It becomes more expensive to stop this war. This victory or possible solution is only getting further away every single day. So, what's the reason for this? Why for 11 years we haven't learned almost anything? Why are we still discussing whether or not we should reward Russia with the territory, or if we should punish them for all the violation of international law, for all the war crimes they have committed? How come that 11 years is not enough for all of us? This should be an easy question to take a side in this war. This is the most black and white conflict as possible. So if people still, after 11 years, cannot decide whether it's okay that Russia has violated international law and invaded Ukraine, whether people still believe that Russia has some claims because sometime in history they have been occupying this territory before, and that's why they have a right to do this, then I don't know what else I have to say to these people, because it is very easy, it is black and white. There is one country which is violating international law, one country that is invading another, one country that doesn't bother to shoot the kids in the kindergartens, doesn't bother to destroy hospitals, children hospitals, not military hospitals, and has absolutely no boundaries to what atrocities they are willing to commit. Killing civilians for fun, raping and torturing people in Ukraine has become part of Russian warfare in Ukraine. They have occupied nuclear power station, which is not permitted according to Geneva Convention. They have destroyed the biggest dam in Ukraine, which had capacity similar to the biggest water dam in Norway. It has caused an ecological disaster. We don't know how many people have been killed as a result of this flood. But Russia doesn't stop there. They have not been even punished for this. And during these 3 months, Russia is serving us the lie that they want peace. But instead of sitting down at the negotiations table, instead of giving their proposal, which would be at least close to reality, instead of doing this, Russia is running a terror campaign against Ukrainian civilians. They are striking Ukrainian cities with the record amount of drones. They are showing their muscles. The indecision from Trump, his stupid policies, have only given Russia enough time to build new factories, build a lot more drones, scale their production, manufacturing capacity. So now Russia is using hundreds of drones, more than 200 drones, sometimes 300 drones, and they can do it 3 days in a row. This is a change of their ability. And it looks like China is finally taking sides after the parade in Moscow on 9th of May. The Russian Xi Jinping has announced that Russia will be that China will be supporting Russia in this war. What has been done covertly now will be done publicly. And also China is reducing their supply of drones to Ukraine and to European countries where Ukraine can buy those drones. So the war situation is becoming only worse, only dire. And still, even though Russia is not managed to show any good advancing, most likely this counter-offensive of theirs that everyone was talking about is now in progress for possibly a month. They have occupied few square kilometers here and there, but it's not changing the proportion on the front line. The war, however, has changed significantly. The warfare on front line is absolutely different from what it used to be in 2014 and even what it used to be in 2022. Now Ukraine needs all the help they can get. Ukraine needs air defense systems, new ones. The old air defense systems are either not working or they are destroyed or Ukraine doesn't have missiles for them. Russia is depleting the stocks. When Russia is attacking Ukraine with 300 drones, Ukraine does not have enough capacity to shoot down all of the targets. So if this continues, the situation will only worsen. It means that Ukraine will start losing territory. That number of casualties in Ukraine will only go up. Number of casualties in Russia is steady. It's over 1,000 people a day, but they don't care. For Putin, it doesn't matter how many Russians have to be killed for his ambitions. So initially we thought when the number of casualties will surpass the war in Afghanistan, which has begun the collapse of Soviet Union. We thought that something will happen in Russia. This number of casualties in the war has surpassed the war in Afghanistan probably 10 times. And we can see absolutely no movement in Russia threatening the Putin regime. If Russia can continue the cash flow from European countries, from China, from other countries, they can sustain this war for much longer. The only way to stop this war is to implement new sanctions on Russia and get stricter on all the previous sanctions. The supply of cash preventing financing of Russian war should be the cornerstone now, should be the most critical question. If we solve this, then we can solve the rest. It doesn't mean that we don't need to arm Ukraine. This has to be done regardless of any other means, of any other pressure on Russia. So this war has not stopped for a single day. Some people are living in the war for more than 11 years. Other people, the rest of Ukraine, are living in the war conditions for 1192 days. Christmas, Easter, or any other holiday doesn't matter. Russia is shooting drones, missiles, killing civilians every single night. It is according to unofficial sources who say that the number of casualties has surpassed 1 million people in autumn last year. It is reasonable to believe that the amount of people who have been killed in this war is between 300,000 to 400,000 people. These numbers are combined for Russia and Ukraine, military and civilians. It is much less than what Trump is claiming, who says that millions have died. This is completely falsehood, but 400,000 people is not a small amount. It is approximately every second person in Oslo. So if you can make a thought experiment and imagine every second person in Oslo together, imagine all these people have been killed for the ambitions of Putin, who wants to recollect the lands, who wants to restore the empire, and who now says that Soviet empire actually still exists. It didn't collapse. It might be fun to hear him saying this if you are not Ukrainian. So it is a tradition on our demonstration to honor the memory of all the soldiers who have been killed while defending Ukraine, as well as the memory of all the civilians who have been murdered in this illegal and unprovoked war started by Russia in Ukraine. Let us honor them with the moment of silence. Я прошу всіх згадати хвилиною мовчання пам'ять всіх військових, хто загинув, захищаючи Україну, та пам'ять всіх цивільних, хто був вбитий в цій неспровокованій та незаконній війні, розпочатій Кацапстаном. Дякую. Thank you. I would like now to give a word to our good friend Ellen Yarde, who joins us every day on the demonstration and prepares some news for us. And I will later follow up on the same news and what is happening in Ukraine. Я передаю слово Ellen Yarde.
Ukrainsk etterretning anslår nå at rundt 50 000 russiske soldater samlet nær Sumy, like ved den russiske Kursk-regionen, for å delta i Russlands sommeroffensiv. Russiske generaler skal visstnok anse dette som Russlands siste sjanse til militær seier. Et av målene i sommeroffensiven vil være å okkupere de 30% av fylket Donetsk, som fremdeles under ukrainsk kontroll. Viktige mål byene Pokrovsk og Konstantinivka. Russland har prøvd å okkupere Pokrovsk i nesten 10 måneder nå, og har hatt minimal framskritt de siste månedene. Russlands framrykning går bokstavelig talt saktere enn en hagesnegle. Tysklands nye kansler Friedrich Merz har nå uttalt at Tyskland ikke vil sette noen restriksjoner på Ukrainas bruk av tyske missiler, altså Taurus-missiler. I praksis vil det antagelig bety at missilene blir sendt til Ukraina som deler, og så satt sammen i Ukraina. Russlands utenriksminister Lavrov sier at Tyskland på vei mot det samme sporet som landet fulgte 2 ganger i forrige århundre. Og han sikter da til Tysklands angrep på Russland i første verdenskrig og angrepet på Sovjetunionen i andre verdenskrig. At Lavrov uttaler seg negativt, viser at dette en riktig beslutning av Tyskland. Nyhetsbyrået Reuters melder nå om Russlands krav til en fredsavtale, altså hva som var på plass før man kan begynne å forhandle om en fredsavtale. Vesten må erklære at de ikke skal utvide NATO østover. Og her ligger en logisk feilslutning. Det ikke NATO som har ekspandert østover, det tidligere sovjetrepublikker som har søkt seg inn i NATO, fordi de ikke har lyst til å bli okkupert av Russland igjen. Russland ønsker ikke at flere land som Georgia, Moldova og Ukraina blir NATO-medlemmer, fordi det vil gjøre det svært vanskelig for Russlands ambisjoner om å utøve geopolitisk innflytelse i disse områdene. Det andre kravet, Ukraina må for all framtid være nøytralt. Krav nummer 3, vestlige sanksjoner må fjernes. Krav nummer 4, russiske bankinnskudd som frosset i vestlige banker må frigjøres. Og 5, beskyttelse av russiskspråklige folk i Ukraina. Og det logikk på linje med Nazi-Tyskland, som ville beskytte i gåsehudene de tyskspråklige i Tsjekkoslovakia og Polen. Jeg husker hvordan det gikk, 1938 og 1939. Og dette altså de kravene som Russland vil ha gjennom før forhandlinger. Så kan de endelig få de 300 milliarder dollar som frosset i vestlige banker, bruke disse til fortsatt krigføring når de bryter våpenhvilen, for det vil de gjøre. Donald Trump sa nylig at han veldig skuffet over Putin, men han gitt Putin 2 nye uker for å komme opp med et fredsinitiativ. Så Donald Trump, hvis jeg husker fra en drøy uke tilbake, så var det jo snakk om å ha fredsforhandlinger mellom Ukraina og Russland i Istanbul, i Tyrkia. Det ble det ikke noe av. Russland sendte bare en delegasjon som gjentok russiske krav, som reelt sett betyr at Ukraina skal kapitulere. Det var Trump skuffet over. Men nå har Trump sagt dette tilsvarende. Han har sagt 27. april, 19. mai og 28. mai. Trump har truet om å innføre hardere sanksjoner mot Russland Men enten så vil han det ikke, eller så klarer Putin å snakke han bort fra det hver gang. Uansett, Trump sier, jeg gir Russland 2 uker, 2 uker går. Ok, Trump gir Russland nye 2 uker, og nye 2 uker går, og ingenting skjer. John Bolton var nasjonal sikkerhetsrådgiver for Trump i Trumps første presidentperiode. Bolton har denne uka sagt i et intervju at gradvise sanksjoner virker ikke. Det hvite hus må innføre hardere sanksjoner, både primære sanksjoner og særlig sekundære sanksjoner, altså sanksjoner som rammer land som handler med Russland. Og problemet kan oppsummeres med forkortelsen TACO, faktisk, som har blitt spredt mange steder på nett i det siste. Trump always chickens out. Trump feiger alltid ut. Trump truer med å innføre hardere sanksjoner mot Russland. Det blir med snakket. Han gjør ingenting. TACO kjennetegner alt Trump gjør. Han innførte kraftige tollsatser mot Kina tidligere i våres. 130% toll på kinesiske varer. Men reduserte det raskt til 30% da aksjemarkedet svarte med å rase. Så vi har dessverre ikke noe vi kan se fram til fra amerikansk side så lenge Trump er president. Europa må virkelig øke innsatsen. Det er Europa det står på, og Norge, hvis Ukraina skal vinne den kampen. Takk.
Tusen takk, Erlend. I will translate a little bit later, and of course Erlend knew I would bring up the Friday taco topic, this Trump always chickens out, this very nice indeed explanation of Trump's policy of his second term. He indeed demands a lot from all the countries and always backs down on his demands. What's, however, is more tragic is that Trump is walking back on all the previous commitments that USA has had. To remind you, Ukraine has given up its nuclear arsenal. It was, I think, third largest arsenal in the world. Ukraine has given it up for the guarantees of protection. These guarantees have been signed in the Budapest Memorandum. It was signed by the USA, UK, Russia, and then China and France has signed separate documents. And now what we can see is that Russia, China, and the USA, the 3 out of 4 signatories of Budapest Memorandum, are now saying that Crimea can be considered as part of Russian territory. Imagine how Ukraine should feel. Ukraine is basically betrayed by these 3 super countries, which promised to be guarantors, but when the war has come, they said, well, we don't honor previous commitments. This is nothing to us. And USA, which was always supporting democracies around the world, suddenly became wondering why in the world they would need to support Ukraine. And then they said that, well, without payment, there is no need to support Ukraine. That US needs payment in the form of natural resources, and all the previous help also has to be paid back to the US. This is what Trump has communicated 100 times. But if we see, of course, his policies are damaging the whole world. And what's also quite important is that Trump is pressing Canada. He introduced tariffs, and he said that if Canada wants to avoid tariffs, they have to become a part of USA. What's peculiar with this point is that it is violation of NATO agreement. It is violation of paragraph 2 of NATO agreement, which says that the nations of the members of NATO should avoid using economical or military force against each other. Introducing tariffs against Canada is a direct violation of this paragraph. So when some people are still hoping that US may honor the paragraph 5 of the agreement, meaning collective defense, I have bad news for you. US has already violated NATO agreement, and with all these rhetorics, there is no reasons to believe that somehow they will honor this agreement if there is a very bad situation happening. There was recently an article in the Foreign Policy. Unfortunately, I couldn't read the whole article, but basically, judging from the headlines, they say that the war that Russia is about to start, or that Russia may start with Europe, will be absolutely different than the war with Ukraine. Russia would aim to occupy a small part of any NATO country and then basically blackmail everyone that if they try to take it back, Russia will use nukes. This is one of the possible scenarios. And to be honest, any scenario of Russia attacking Europe is not good. We don't have an answer to any scenario. A possible Saddam tactics, we don't know how to counter this. And what I was saying, it is also described in foreign policy as quotes from different ministers of defense. A minister of defense in one of the Baltic countries is saying that once there is a pause in the war in Ukraine, or the war in Ukraine is de-escalating, then it would take 3 to 6 months before Russia is likely to start an invasion of a NATO country in Europe. This is exactly what I have been explaining. Imagine, Russia has 45% of their budget committed to military purpose. They are building new factories to produce new drones, new missiles. All of these weapons are new. NATO doesn't have a way to counter these weapons. All the NATO air defense systems are designed for ancient weapons. All the NATO troops have been training and have experience from Afghanistan, from Iraq, and the war in Ukraine, possible war with Russia will be absolutely different from the war in Afghanistan or the war in Iraq. No NATO army is ready to face Russia, and no NATO army has a recipe for the newest weapons that Russia has. So imagine that you are Putin and you have this crazy idea of restoring the empire, and you know that Europe is extremely weak. You know that USA will not come to help if you invade. You know that Turkey is dependent on you and Turkey will not come to help you, which means two largest armies in NATO are not going to interfere. What would be, this is the best situation for Putin to try to reclaim Baltic countries, which he always keeps saying they are part of Soviet Empire, they are part of Russia. There are lots of Russian-speaking people, so you cannot prove that Putin is wrong. Because Putin says where people speak Russian language, that's the territory of Russia. So Putin does not have a better time to invade. He knows that no one can face him, no one can defend these countries right now. In 3 years' time, maybe Europe will develop this capability. So the only thing that Putin needs is a break from a war in Ukraine. And once this break, if this break will happen, then the war in Europe will start. So the only possibility that I can see to prevent this course of events is if we arm Ukraine, is that we don't allow Russia to rearm and regroup. These several months, these 4 months of this year has already been enough for them to build a lot more factories, a lot more drones. Russia keeps getting components from the West. Russia keeps getting, for example, trucks that are built in Europe. It is not allowed, they are sanctioned, but anyway, Volvo trucks are waiting in line to cross the border with Russia from Turkey, Georgia, and other countries. And it's not only Volvo trucks, weapons producers in Europe are, for example, exporting sniper rifles to Russia. I don't know if they do it directly or not, and it's not some strange producers, it's world-renowned Beretta Benelli concern that has been selling sniper rifles to Russia despite sanctions since 2014. And the war, the atrocities that are happening doesn't bother this weapons producer, doesn't bother companies which continue trading with Russia helping them circumventing the sanctions. If this continues, why would Putin stop the war? If he sees that the only wish from Europe and USA is to restart trade with Russia. When Trump was shouting about his peace plan, what has happened? People close to Trump are negotiating to buy the last working gas pipe, the so-called Turk Stream, the part of the gas pipe that goes through Turkey and Bulgaria. So when people close to Trump want to buy it, they are not willing to actually put sanctions on Russia and block gas pipe. They are willing to earn money from the supplying Russian gas into Europe. A lot of companies inside Europe were already preparing, making plans to restart trade with Russia. Putin promised them that they can return with very good economical benefits. And the countries were just waiting. Just give us the peace agreement and we will flood cash into Russia. We will start selling cars. We will start doing business with Russia. Just like in 2015, when the cheap Russian gas was more important than punishing Putin for invading Ukraine, for annexing Crimea. Everybody thought we just need gas from Russia, and Ukraine, we can just forget about it, and somehow it will solve itself. But the problems, they don't solve itself. It's only getting worse. And it was stupid to believe something else. Russia has occupied Georgia 2 times, and on those territories, nothing is getting better. Russia keeps occupying Moldova, and on that territory, nothing is getting better, except the prospects of kicking out Russia out of Transnistria. We can look at the longer conflict in Gaza and Palestine. The lack of solution only makes it worse. It only makes things worse, and it's not getting better. This war in Gaza will not solve by itself. And by trying to pretend that the war in Ukraine can solve itself, we can create another Gaza, but a lot bigger and a lot deadlier. And then it will be in Europe. It will not be on another continent. Do we really want this to happen? Do we really want waves of millions of refugees going from Ukraine when another escalation of the war happens? And if we don't want this, why our politicians are so stupid not to make the right decisions, not to have a strategy? Why they are looking only for 1 or 2 months ahead? Because all their decisions can only be explained that they look 1 or 2 months ahead. And in any case, they don't look further than the next elections, which they believe they will probably lose and someone else will take their place. And that's why they don't need to take responsibility for their actions. That's why when a former NATO General Secretary becomes a finance minister, he quickly changed his position, his ideas, and what he believes in. It's changing very fast. And someone can say that he has the boss, he doesn't make decisions. What can finance minister do alone? He only does what his party, what the prime minister is telling him. If we listen to them, they say that they all support Ukraine. But when we look at what happens, is that support of Ukraine is ridiculous compared to the profit that Norway is earning. Dagens Næringsliv has published an article for which they had to apologize because it contained false information. They said that everybody in Norway is paying 25,000 NOK to Ukraine. And while people are criticizing Norway, Norway is contributing most among other Nordic countries. But later they had to apologize because it was a lie. No one is paying 25,000 NOK to Ukraine. Instead, Norway is earning trillions of money for the high gas prices. Norway is investing this money in the oil fund. And the interest rate, the utkast from the oil fund, is the things that Norway gives to Ukraine. Norway is not sharing the profit. Norway is just sharing the interest on the profit. That's the 3% approximately, that's possibly less than 3%. So It's not that you are spending money. Norway is getting richer on this war. And of course, this is not what Norway is intending. It's the consequences of the economy. And we understand it. And we know that Norway has done a lot. So don't get me wrong. I'm not ungrateful. I thank Norway and I really appreciate everything that they do for Ukraine. It's a lot of help. Historically, this is unprecedented, like the sanctions. But does it solve the problem? All this help, does it bring us closer to victory? Does it bring us closer to the solution? And unfortunately, the answer is no. What we are doing, we are keeping the patient alive, but we don't give him the cure. The patient is living for 3 years, and the patient is not dead, and he's not dying, but he's not recovering. He's not getting better, it's getting worse. We have the cure, but we are shy on administering it. The situation in Ukraine now is becoming worse, and possibly by the end of the year, by the beginning of the next year, Ukraine will need NATO troops on their territory in order to continue this war. This is the unfortunate truth. Without NATO troops, Ukraine will start losing. And if Ukraine will lose in this war, and what do I mean by losing in this war? If Russia will claim the territories of 2 or maybe even 4 regions that they claim are part of Russia, this will be a loss for Ukraine. But that will mean that Putin will prove one simple thing. When he invades a new country, instead of getting punished, he gets rewarded. And if you think that after doing this, Russia will stop, then there is no reason for them to stop. Instead, they will get a great proof that if they continue, they will get rewarded more. They only need to get a bigger army, a bigger commitment, and then they can invade other countries. No one will punish them. This is the world we are bringing in. With our indecision, with waiting, with hesitating, with the ideas that we don't need to provoke Russia. Russia does not need to be provoked. If they want to invade Estonia, Latvia or Lithuania, they will do it when they have enough power. They will do it in the moment that is comfortable for them. And creating a pretext, creating a casus belli for Russia is easy. If you remember how they invaded Ukraine, they have prepared a provocation that was pre-bombed by USA. USA said that our intelligence is showing that Russia is going to create a provocation on this date, on this place. Then Russia made this provocation, but it didn't launch because everyone knew that's exactly what US has talked about. So Russia just invaded Ukraine without, with any regards to that provocation, that it actually failed. They just ran into the country. But they promised that all these troops will go back home. They promised that they are not going to invade Ukraine. Lavrov, the foreign minister, said that all these countries, they are spreading false rumors and Russia is not going to invade. So now when you listen, the same man says that Russia is not going to invade Europe. Russia is not going to start war with NATO. If you feel the relief, then again, I'm sorry, but I have the bad news for you. Because for Russia, lying on this level doesn't cost anything. This is what they were doing many times, and they would be easily doing this again and again. Obviously, the only thing that can stop Russia from invading Europe is if Europe will be strong. If Russia would not have a chance to invade any small part of territory. If Russia will know that they will meet strong opposition. If Russia will know that Europe is ready to face them. And unfortunately, we are very far from this in time. Some say we need 5 years, some say we need 10 years. And this 5 to 10 years means that we have to increase the expenses for defenses. We need to build new factories. Because North Korea, imagine this, North Korea is building more artillery shells than Europe and USA all together. Imagine this disproportion. And North Korea is providing these artillery shells to Russia. We have been long living in peace, and we have not been prepared for war. So this old Latin saying, I forgot it, but if you want peace, prepare for war. I don't remember exactly the saying. I would not. Yeah. But this is the old truth, and it is actually holding now. Russia is preparing for war. In 2014, they have been rebuilding military facilities along the border with Ukraine, and now we have the news that Russia starts rebuilding military facilities along the border with Finland and Norway. So you can listen to this political party for Fred or Rettferdighet, which says that Russia is basically rightful in the invasion of Ukraine, and they have a very good solution for peace in Ukraine. Just stop giving help to Ukraine and let Ukrainians die, and let Russia occupy Ukraine, convert it in a large concentration camp, and then there will be peace. These people will use the same recipe for you. They will say that Norway should not oppose Russia. Norway should just lay down, belly up, let Russia occupy Norway, do the ethnic cleansing, kill all the people who don't like Russia, and then there will be peace. This is the kind of peace they are advocating for. This is very obvious kind of peace. And this is the peace, this is the freedom Russia is fighting for. Freedom to invade, freedom to torture, freedom to rape, freedom to violate international laws, freedom for Russia to decide the future of other countries around it. So, if you agree with such new world order, then you don't have to worry about anything, because this is exactly what is coming towards our way. This is the reason, or this is the result of hesitation and the result of policy, of nowadays policy of Norway and many other European countries. The sanctions on Russia are hanging on the fence. Every 3 or 6 months there is review of the sanctions, and there are countries like Slovakia and Hungary who are willing to block help to Ukraine, who are willing to block the next wave of sanctions. These frozen Russian assets, which Erland has mentioned, $300 billion, these assets are always at risk of being given back to Russia. Or maybe it's 300 trillion, probably billion. So these assets are always at risk to be given back to Russia if only Hungary votes against the continuation of sanctions. There are other mechanisms. It is possible to approve sanctions in a way that everyone has to vote for stopping the sanctions. But due to policy, due to politics, European Union, the European Commission is not willing to work in this way. So all the time we are on the brink of restarting trade with Russia, of giving them necessary money to rebuild their militaries, only for them to come back at us in a matter of few years later. Supporting Ukraine these days is not a charity, it is a necessity. And countries have to do it for their own good, for their own security. Unfortunately, it is a lot more clear for Denmark, Sweden, Finland, who does a lot more. And of course, it's clear for Baltic states, who in proportion to their GDP give a lot more help than other countries, and especially Norway, unfortunately. And also, we hear about the commitments, we hear about the new weapons getting to Ukraine, like Erland mentioned, Taurus missiles. It will take so long time before these missiles could be armed on the fighter jets, before Ukraine knows how to deal with this, before these missiles actually get to the places where they can use. Maybe it will take just 1 or 2 months. It will be optimistic. Maybe it will take half a year. Maybe they already have been delivered and news just broke out now. It is also possible. Very often, as experts are saying, up to 50% of all the promises that will be sent to Ukraine in form of money or weapons, they're not realized at all. It's just left as a commitment. Last year in January, there was a report of the UK fund that has been created just 1 month after the full-scale invasion. And 1.5 years, or almost 2 years later, 50% of the money in the fund were still on the accounts in the UK. Due to bureaucracy, due to tenders, constant paperwork, this money has been effectively frozen. They could not have been spent on Ukraine. They have been promised, there were nice headlines, and that's it. This money were lying in the UK. We don't know what happens now, and we don't know what is the actual help. But we know that Ukraine says that they need everything, from the basic ammunition to the night scopes, to of course drones, to countermeasures for drones. They need everything now. They need constantly artillery shells. And at the time when Jonas Gahr Støre is saying that Ukraine doesn't need all the money right here and now, there was Czech Republic who was saying, who could sponsor the buying of artillery shells for Ukraine? We need countries to give us money so that we can buy these artillery shells and give to Ukraine so that Ukraine can defend itself. But Jonas Gahr Støre said Ukraine doesn't need money now. Ukraine will need money in 2030 and we will provide it in 2030. And then, yeah, so this is miscommunication that is happening from the government and unfortunately still continues. It is true that Norway has increased the support to Ukraine by 50 billion NOK this year, but this is not gonna change the course of war. If Norway would decide to contribute 10% of the extra profit they earned during this war, that may change a lot. And it will not change the prices here, it will not drive the interest rate in Norway if this money are spent in the US, if Norway will buy weapons in the US and bring this to Ukraine. And Trump will be very glad to sell weapons to someone to earn money, of course. He will not put the blocks. But somehow these nice ideas don't get into the heads of the decision makers. And Jens Stoltenberg, who was advocating for something like this, or he was saying that everybody has to do more when he was Secretary General, somehow has forgotten about what he was advocating for once he became the finance minister. This is very unfortunate because the amount of strikes, this terror on civilians, this amount of people who are dying every day in the last couple of months, it is becoming just insane. And imagining the psychological conditions of people who live under these bombings, it's very heavy. It's impossible to comprehend when we live here in Norway. I spoke to my mother. She says she has two young ladies in their 30s who just can't bear it anymore. She says that they are psychologically completely drained. They cannot work, they have work, but they cannot do anything. They cannot sleep at night because they have to hide in the bathroom from the bombing. They cannot work properly after not sleeping the whole night. And when the bombings are happening every night for a couple of weeks, how do you think they can survive? What is the quality of life for these people? And there are tens of millions in Ukraine still. There are 30 millions left, maybe 36 millions left. If Russia makes their life impossible, their only choice would be to flee. The number of refugees in Europe can instantly not just double, it can increase tenfold. And all of this because we are still thinking Should we spend this extra profit to give Ukraine necessary defenses? Should we give enough weapons to Ukraine, or should we just give a little bit so that this war continues and Ukraine just doesn't lose, but neither wins? So this is very sad and desperate to see for every Ukrainian, unfortunately. We see some things that are going the right way, but it's very little optimism these days in Ukraine. Our time has come to an end, and I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. I would like to remind you that we are standing here every day at 5 o'clock on work days and 12 o'clock during the weekend. And we are going to end our demonstration in a couple of minutes with the national anthem of Ukraine. Я розповідав, що останні 2 місяці кацапи використовували терористичну тактику боротьби з цивільними. І що постійні обстріли в Україні це, коли ти бачиш ці жертви кожну ніч, коли ти бачиш ці обстріли, я просто на прикладі 2 знайомих моєї мами пояснив, що як це відчувають люди, які не можуть спати вночі, а потім їм треба йти на роботу, і так впродовж тижнів, місяців іноді. Ці люди, вони не можуть нормально жити. І якщо їх життя не буде можливим, їх єдина можливість вижити буде стати біженцями і приїхати в Європу, яка все ж таки не може вирішити, чи надавати Україні достатньо зброї, чи надати трошки, щоб Україна ще трошки протрималась, але ні в якому разі не перемогла. Я пояснював, що санкції висять на волоску кожен раз, коли їх переглядають, що ці 300 мільярдів євро, які заморожені, вони теж висять на волоску, і кожен раз Угорщина може накласти вето і не продовжити заморозку цих активів. Що дуже багато, що є можливість поміняти те, як санкції продовжуються. Але чомусь недостатньо політичної волі для таких правильних кроків. І знову ж я розповідав про Єнса Столтенберга, який дуже різко поміняв свою точку зору щодо України, як тільки став міністром фінансів. Будучи на позиції голови НАТО, генсека НАТО, він адвокував за надання більшої допомоги Україні. А як тільки він став фінансовим міністром, раптом він поміняв точку зору, і тепер він каже, що головне – це не використовувати навіть всі гроші, які Норвегія може. Я пояснював, що та брехня, яка була опублікована в провідній економічній газеті Норвегії, ДН, Dagens Næringsliv, про те, що кожен з норвежців дає Україні 25 тисяч крон. За цю брехню газета мусила вибачитись та опублікувати вірні дані. Насправді, допомога Норвегії, яка надходить Україні, вона приблизно дорівнює відсотку ренті за той надприбуток, який Норвегія вклала в нафтовий фонд. Так от рента з цих грошей, вона приблизно дорівнює витратам Норвегії на Україну. Тому, на жаль, оскільки продовжується таке очікування чогось, у Хуйла завжди буде надія, сподівання на те, що він виграє. І причини, з яких кацапи раптом би закінчили війну, вони не будуть існувати. Коли в Америці та в Європі компанії тільки й роздумують, щоб настало перемир'я, і вони вже потирають ручки і планують, як вони почнуть знову бізнес з кацапами, як вони знову отримують дешевий газ. Люди з компанії, близькі до команди Трампа, вже хочуть купити цю газову трубу через Болгарію. Звичайно, вони не будуть блокувати цей газ. І поки такі будуть сигнали, то, звичайно, Хуйло не зупинить цю війну. Тому Європі треба зрозуміти, що відбувається. І я ще говорив про іншу статтю foreign policy, але про це буде іншого дня. Дякую всім, хто прийшли сьогодні на демонстрацію. І, як завжди, ми закінчимо демонстрацію виконанням державного гімну України.
Ще не вмерла України ні слава, ні воля. Ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці, западуєм і ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Слава захисникам та захисницям України! Слава! 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 Слава Збройним силам України! Слава! Слава! Слава!
Я хочу нагадати, що завтра демонстрація розпочнеться об 11 годині. У нас зміна в розкладі. I would like to remind you that tomorrow the demonstration will start at 11 o'clock in the morning here.
Is it possible to take a group picture?
Давайте зробимо групову фотографію тих, хто хоче. От чоловік, який допомагає Україні і буває часто в Україні, він просить. Тому давайте підійдемо до колонки і зробимо групову фотографію, будь ласка. I asked to just come to the speaker here and we will have a group photo.
So you have a flag on that side.
Давайте хтось з прапором. От все. Ні. По центру стань з прапором.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Want me to let me make a photo with you. Just go there.
Okay.
Ще одну секундочку. Так. 3, 4.